really help us to just keep our focus on you during this time. And I pray that you'll help us to be safe. Amen.
Amen. Okay, can you guys hear me? Sounds like it's not anymore. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Well, I'm really excited to be here talking to you guys tonight. I think if you guys know me, you guys know that I get excited about things very easily. So I can literally be excited about like blue sky or a really green tree. But really, I really am excited to be here with you guys tonight. I was thinking about the last time I spoke at Renew, and it was actually a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, and you guys were actually not here. Like the only thing that was here was these chairs, that camera, the staff, and then we printed off pictures of y'all's face and like taped them onto the chairs. So yeah, they're back up there behind the sound booth. So, much different times. That was when kind of like the world kind of shut down a little bit, and it was quarantine and shelter in place, and so very different time. Makes me very thankful that we get to be actually in person this time. What a reason to celebrate. But like I think about that, I'm like, this has been a wild past year, but I think we'll have a lot of like interesting stories to come out of it. Maybe some funny ones, maybe some not so funny ones. But growing up, my grandma used to tell me so many stories of her childhood, and she was born in the early 1930s, and so her whole childhood was in the time of the Great Depression, and so she has so many stories about her childhood growing up, and they were very, very poor. So she would tell us so many stories, like she only had, like, at a time she only would have one pair of shoes, and she would only wear them when there was like an event, and otherwise she'd go barefoot, and like during Christmas, like it was like such a treat if they got like a piece of fruit or something, And she went through that time, and it became like a part of her, right? It became like a part of her story and who she was, to the point where she wanted to share that with others. And, we heard some of those stories one time, some of them 2 times, some of them like 25 times, some of them I know them backwards and forwards, and I can tell you, and it'll almost be like I experienced it, right? But that's part of like her story. That's a part of her story, what kind of made her, what kind of built her up. And so I think I don't know, maybe 40 years down the way, 50 years down the way, some of these stories we might be telling people around us and kind of saying, back in my day, we wore masks. Back in my day, we only had pictures of students on the chairs when we spoke to them. But it's a part of our story, right? And everyone has a story. Everyone has a life story. So today, we're going to be looking at 2 Samuel 11. And this is a story of David and Bathsheba. And you're thinking, Hannah, what? Why are we going over this? What? But we're going to look at this story and see the life story of David and Bathsheba and other people in the story, and see what their story is and what the Lord did in the midst of it. So if you guys want to turn there with me, that'd be awesome. So one thing that's really important when you're studying the Old Testament, it's really important to know the general context of what is happening, what's behind the scenes, what does this look like. So in 2 Samuel 11, that's where we're going to camp out at. This is when David is king, and currently they're in a war. They're in a war against the Ammonites. So this is a really tough war. It's really hard, and there's a lot of men who have gone and fought this war. But in this chapter, we get to see a picture of David, and he's the king. He's the one that's basically in charge of it all, but he's not at the front lines. He's not there fighting with them, but he's actually back in Jerusalem. So let's read through the word together. We're going to be in the whole chapter of 11, and we're going to take it bit by bit. So it says, in the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. And it happened late one afternoon, oh my goodness, when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from a roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent his messengers and took her. And she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanliness. Then she returned to her house, and the woman conceived. And she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." So I gotta be honest, guys, when like the majority of the times growing up that I heard this story, I feel like I kind of heard it in a way where it was like, yeah, Bathsheba, she kind of knew what she was doing. She kind of knew where she was, and she thought about it like a little bit. She knew that David was there. I'm gonna kind of take a little turn from that, and we're gonna walk through this and see, what did David do? How did he think through this? What happened with this? Because there's a lot to this story that's just really interesting. So honestly, I think when we go through a little bit, I think that David, I think he kind of knew what he was doing. I think that he did. He saw a beautiful woman. He saw Bathsheba bathing, and he was like, "Who that? Who is that? Who is that?" And he found out that she was married. And he found out that she was married to Uriah the Hittite, who he knew that he was a warrior and was away. So right off the bat, David knew that she was married, and David knew that her husband was away and was not there. But still, David chose to push forward and say, yeah, go get her. Go get her. Like I said, context is really important, and so you can see what the historical context is, but also the cultural context. And so in that time, he's a king. He's a king. So when he called to Bathsheba, she can't say no. She can't say no. David, he is a man of God, but he's also human and makes mistakes and he sins. And so she's probably might be fearful, saying, there might be consequences if I say no. There might be consequences if I don't go to his palace, if I don't go see him. But still, she went. And then we see how she got there, and they slept together. It says he lay with her, and I was looking into this, and it was saying how the Hebrew word that is used here, it's called shakav, and I'm not taking Hebrew, so I don't know if the pronunciation's right, but it says that it generally means sleeping with someone or laying with someone, but it pointed out that all of the times that maybe that word was used, especially in the Old Testament, it was used in the context of rape. This is not a light subject, and I'm not trying to scare you guys or make you guys feel weird, but this is the Bible, and this is true, and we got to go through it. So essentially, we're seeing a story here that is essentially sexual assault. This is hard, and this is deep. This is just no good. So there's a lot of sin that's already in this first little bit, and we get to see one of the first consequences of this sin. We see at the end that we just read, she went to David and she said, "I am pregnant." Now, life is a beautiful thing. Like when you have a baby, that's beautiful. But in this case, David was like, "Oh, shoot. I'm going to be caught. I'm going to be caught." He said, "This woman's not my wife. Everyone's going to know that I slept with her." So he said, okay, I got to fix this. So as we go on, in verse 6, it says, "So David sent word to Joab, and he said, 'Send me Uriah the Hittite.' And Joab sent Uriah to David, and when Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was doing and how the people were doing and how the war was going. And David said to Uriah, 'Go down to your house and wash your feet.' And Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. When they told David, Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, 'Have you not come from a journey? And why did you not go down to your house?' And Uriah said to David, 'The ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do that.' Then David said to Uriah, 'Remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back.' So Uriah remained in Jerusalem the day and the next, and David invited him, and he ate in his presence and drank, so that he made him drunk. And in the evening he went out to lie on his couches with the servants of his lord, but he did not go down to the house." So basically we got David, right? He's in a situation. He's about to get caught. he made another woman pregnant. That is not his wife. So he said, okay, I got it. I got it. I'm going to go get Uriah. I'm going to bring him. I'm going to pretend that it's all about like checking in and like making sure things are good, like in the war and all the fighting. But he said, but then I'm going to be like, okay, you can go on, go like be with your wife, just like be with him. They're going to sleep together. Then they was like, I will just pretend like the baby's theirs and like it's good. It'll be good. And he thinks that this is a solid plan. But what he did not think about is the character of Uriah. And this is where we start to see who Uriah is. And we see that he's an honorable man, that he knows right from wrong. And he's so honorable and even so loyal to his soldiers alongside him that he says, I can't when they're struggling, when they're suffering, I can't go enjoy myself. Like I can't. So we get to see how Uriah's character and him being honorable ruins the sinful plan and the scheming of David. So David did not expect that. So David says, okay, plan B, we got it. We're going to make him drunk, and then he's going to go on to his wife. They're going to sleep together. Then they're going to get pregnant, and we'll just pretend that the baby's theirs, and like it'll be all good. Well, we see that doesn't happen either. That plan doesn't happen either, and that's that. So David has to move on to plan C, and plan C starts to get a little bit more serious. So in verse 14, we get to see how it says, in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter he wrote, set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him that he may be struck down and die. And as Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew there were valiant men. And the men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of God among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite also died. Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting, and he instructed the messenger, when you have finished telling all the news about the fighting to the king, then if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, why did you go so near to the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at the bed? So why did you go so near to the wall? Then you shall say, your servant Uriah the Hittite also is dead also. Then the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. And the messenger said to David, the men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are also dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. David said to the messenger, thus you shall say to Joab, do not let this matter displease you. For the sword devours now one and now another. Strengthen your attack against the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. So here we get to see how David's scheming to cover up the sin that he has partaken in, the cover-up now becomes our murder plot. It becomes him trying to scheme. Honestly, he's so desperate to the point where he's willing to kill Uriah. He's so desperate to cover up his own honor. So essentially, this is plan C. And we see that he says, okay, put Uriah in the front, then call all the others back. And it makes sense, right? Like, who here has seen The Lord of the Rings? Raise your hand. Yes, I love the movie. If you have not seen it, go watch it. They're super long, but super worth it. There's so many battle scenes in those movies. I feel like that's what I picture. Like, there's so many of ones where, like, there's, like, two guys, and they're, like, running towards each other on the field. Or there's scenes where, like, there's a big wall, and, like, there's people going at it, but it's, like, so difficult to, like, beat that. So in my head, I'm just envisioning just, like, Uriah just, like, running, like, on his own, or, like, on a horse, like, on his own. I feel like I've always watched those movies, and I've always seen the people who are, like, in the front, and I'm like, how do they get there? Like, if I was that, I'd be like, why? Like, I'm gonna die. Like, you know I'm gonna die. Like, you want me to die. Place me in the front. So basically, that's what happens. He's in the front. Surprise, surprise. He dies. He dies. But while this might make David happy or fulfilled or feel like he solved the problem, it's not without consequences. He was selfish, and he was so clouded by his selfishness that he did not think about the others that it would affect. So here we get to see that Uriah died, but also a lot of other good men died at the expense of David wanting to keep his honor, wanting to preserve his honor. So we get to see how these are good men who died, and that did not need to die. Like, they didn't. Like, they were fighting, and they knew what they got into, but they did not deserve to die. So we start to see the consequences of this. And while being killed in battle, at this time, I think even now, being killed in battle, that's an honor. Like, when you die, like, you receive honor for that. So Uriah, he received honor in his death when David was trying to keep his honor in life and was striving towards that. So focused on himself and keeping his reputation. But as we go on, at the little last part of the chapter, in verse 26, it says, when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she lamented over her husband. And when the mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house. And she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. So here we get to see that Bathsheba, she is mourning and lamenting over her husband who died, who was killed on the battlefield. And she is mourning and crying out of pain in that. We get to see how after this period of mourning is over, we see that her and David get married. And then we see that they have a son. And at the very end it says, but the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. So we get to see all the effects of his sin. There's so many consequences due to David's sin. But one of them is that he displeased the Lord. He disappointed the Lord. And that's the end of that chapter. Just the weight of the sin that David acted out in was not honoring to the Lord. So, as we look at this story, we think about it and we're like, oh yeah, like one story, like David and Bathsheba, it's just like one, just go through it. But we look at it, and it's one story, but this affects people in very different ways. Like individually, these are very different stories that these people are experiencing. So we see a few stories in this. I would say there are probably three main characters. Who are those three main characters? Anybody? David, A+. How do y'all know that one? Oh my goodness, impressive. Yeah, we got David. Uriah, yep. Who's the third one? Bathsheba, y'all got it. So these are basically the three main people in the story. And this story affects each of them very differently. Very differently. Same story, it's all one story, but it affects them very differently. At Uriah, we get to see how he's honorable. He knows right from wrong. He knows how to be loyal to his people, to be loyal to the fight, to be loyal to the fighting, the task that was in his hand, the task that he devoted his life to. But even later on, in 2 Samuel chapter 23, it is a chapter, it's titled David's Last Words. And there's a section in there that says David's honorable men. And it lists all these men that were honorable, and they were known for being honorable and being good soldiers and being loyal and being faithful to the fight. And we get to see that Uriah's name is actually in there. Like, he was known for being faithful. He was known for being honorable. So we get to see that about him. But ultimately, because of David's sin and his disobedience, Uriah died. And there's we gotta be upfront about that. There's no coming back from that. There's no coming back for that. He died due to David's sin and disobedience. And so an innocent man died, and that is his story. That's his story. He died. We then get to see the story of David. When we look at this story from his perspective, there is a lot of sin going on here. a lot of sin, a lot of deep sin. I know that every sin, honestly, is the same in the eyes of the Lord, but this sin had a lot of consequences. This sin hurt a lot of people. So we got to be upfront about that too. Essentially, as we walk through the story, essentially he raped a woman, made her pregnant when she was married. He tried to scheme his way out of there to try to save his honor. Ended up intentionally or wanting a man to die to preserve the honor. And out of his selfish desire, he made other honorable men die too when they did not need to. And I know it might seem like I'm being harsh, because I think we all think about David as a man after the Lord's own heart, and he is a man after the Lord's own heart. I don't want y'all to like look at this and be like, okay, never mind, he's not, I don't like him, no more. No, he is a good man. He did a lot of good things that glorify the Lord, but we still have to be real and honest about this and what happened and acknowledge it, and say he both honored the Lord, but also he was human and he fell into sin. But like, we gotta acknowledge both. It's not like one or the other. It's both. And he's a man after the Lord's own heart. But I also want to acknowledge that what David did here, all of this sin, this is not the Lord's heart. This is not who the Lord is. He is not selfish. He is not about his own ambition. He is not a cheater. He is not a schemer. That is not who he is. But this is just David acting out in sin. So this is part of David's story. Everyone has a story. This is part of David's story. This is not all of his story, but this definitely is a crazy part. Then we get to look at the story of Bathsheba. And her story, honestly, I think it really saddens me. I think it's a story, honestly, of a lot of loss and a lot of difficulty. You know, David, I think he acted out in a lot of sin and temptation. But Bathsheba, the majority of her story, she's not acting out, but she's being acted upon. This stuff is happening to her, and these are deep things. These are hard things. It's things like a sexual assault, becoming pregnant with another man's baby, her husband dying, getting married to another man, having to process through that. And then we see that she has her baby. We get to see in the next chapter, we're not going to read through the whole chapter, but in the next chapter we get to see how, because of David's disobedience and because of his sin, their baby that they have ends up dying. So she then has to go through the death of her baby. Just so much pain. Like, I can't even imagine like what pain she's going through. I don't know if you guys know anything about the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 9, so I love to place myself in like people's situations. Like, that just naturally do. But I'm like, this one, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to think about it because it's deep and it's hard. But so much of this she did not choose. So much of this just happened to her. And this is a part of her story. I know you guys are thinking, shoot, Hannah, like this is like super like discouraging and so dark and deep, and how you like what is this? And I'm not about to just be like, okay, peace out, the end, like thanks guys. But no, like there's more to this story. Like, it doesn't just end here. Like, it seems so broken and so full of pain and hurt and hardship and sin, and it is. But at the same time, the Lord was here. The Lord was present. The Lord was with David and Bathsheba and Uriah and all of them. And so he is working through this. In the next chapter, we get to see how, in chapter 12, we get to see how the Lord sends a prophet, Nathan, and he goes to confront David, and he rebukes David of all the things that he did, like he should, and he rebukes him, and David accepts it, and he says, you're right, I did all this, and he takes it before the Lord, and he takes it, and he said, I'm going to take this from me. I've sinned against the Lord. And he admits that. And we see that the Lord then starts to redeem the situation. He starts to redeem the situation. We get to see how, even though their child died, we get to see that the Lord gives them another son. And this son is Solomon. Solomon. If you guys know about Solomon, he was a king, and he was one of the most wise kings that were out there, wisdom that was given from the Lord. And Solomon, he was not a perfect man by any means, but he did a lot of good to glorify the Lord. He did a lot of good. He built up the temple, this was the first temple. They had no place to worship the Lord, not a proper place. So the Lord gave him the job to build the temple, and finally they had a house that they could worship the Lord in, and it was personal, and they got to be there. And the Lord said, I'm going to use Solomon, who's from a broken family, who's from hardship. I'm going to use him to build up my temple. And he ended up also building up his kingdom in so many ways. We also see, when we look at the lineage of Jesus, in Matthew 1, it's a list of all the people that got married, had babies, and ultimately Jesus. And in that lineage, there's 4 women. There is Tamar, there's Rahab, there's Ruth, and then guess who the last one is? Bathsheba. It's Bathsheba. Interestingly enough, in most versions, it names most of those women by name, but for Bathsheba, it doesn't. It says, wife of Uriah. So this story is mentioned in the lineage of Jesus. Not only Bathsheba, but even Uriah. Uriah was mentioned. It was mentioned there and put there. We just get to see, the Lord can use anything. The Lord can use any sin and broken relationship to make amazing things come out of it. Just like Jesus, literally Jesus, the Son of God, came from this story. How insane is that? I want you guys to look over to that mural that's right back there. It's kind of dark, but if you can't really see it, you might want to go get your vision checked. But essentially it says, but God. But God. We get to see this story that's so full of sin and pain and hardship and just so many hard things. And you think, how can good come out of this? What? That's impossible. There's no way. But God came in and he started redeeming this, and he said, no, I'm going to bring an amazing king out of this that's going to build up Israel. He said, no, I'm going to use this family, use this story, and my son is going to come from their lineage. He said, but God is going to use that and is going to redeem that, and we can see how he redeems that. If you guys look over to that mural, there are a whole bunch of little characters or pictures that were drawn up there, and they represent stories. They represent stories almost exactly like this one. This one's not up there, but almost exactly like this one, where it was hard. Something happened. It seemed like there's no way out of it. It seemed impossible. But God came and changed it. But God came and redeemed it. And those stories that are up there, if you guys want, there's each one means something. If you guys want, we can talk about it. We were talking about it on Wednesday. It's super fun. But that's just a little fraction, a little taste of the stories in the Bible where the Lord did something like that. A tiny little taste. There are so many stories where the Lord has brought good out of a situation. So many stories where he has redeemed a situation. And guys, if he is the same yesterday and today and tomorrow, and if he can bring redemption out of any situation, any story, any hardship, any pain, he can do it for you. He's the same God. He can do it for you. And I'm standing up here and I'm 100% confident that he can. He can bring redemption. Like I said, looking at this story, there are a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different stories in this for different people. So maybe you can look at the story of David and you say, I relate to him a lot. He's living in sin. sin that has a lot of consequences. I'm living in that. Maybe there's so much sin that you can't even really tell it's there. And maybe you need the Holy Spirit to come in and convict you and then point it out what is going on. And maybe you relate to that and you're like, yeah, I feel that. Well, I promise you that sin that you might be struggling with, the Lord can see that situation, and the Lord can redeem that. The Lord can walk with you through that and say, I'm going to take that sin from you. I'm going to walk with you as you struggle through that. I'm going to sit with you, and I'm going to hurt with you, and I'm going to help you strive for holiness. He said, I am going to be with you in this. I'm going to walk with you through this and redeem you just like he did for David. Just like he did for David, he can do that for you. Or if you look at the story and if you think that you maybe relate more to Bathsheba, maybe going after trial after trial, after hardship, pain after pain. Maybe it's even pain or trauma or broken relationships or losing people or whatever that looks like. And you're like, I don't know what to do with this. This is pain that I don't know what to do with. Heartache and brokenness and hurt. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I promise you that the Lord can redeem you. I promise you that he will walk with you in that hurt and that pain. And he says, I got you. I got you. I will be the comforter. I will bring healing and restoration in those times where it seems almost impossible. He says, I got you. The Lord can bring redemption to your story if you relate to Bathsheba. This is always like the time of year, I feel like, really, for any ministry or church or anything, we start gearing up for Easter. We should always be excited about Easter and what that look like. This is a time where we love talking about Easter. But Easter, honestly, that's like the ultimate but God story. Like, there's no story that's better than Jesus down on a cross story and being raised up again. But we also get to see how that's the ultimate redemption story too, where Jesus died on a cross, right? Seemed like end of story. 3 days later, he was raised up from the grave. And because of that, we're able to go from death to life. We're able to go from brokenness to healing, right? When there was no way, now there is a way. Now there's a way for us to get to relationship with him, to ultimate redemption, ultimate healing. And that's the ultimate redemption story. If you guys relate to any of these stories, if you relate to David and you say, you know what, I have sin that I'm struggling with, and I want someone to talk through with it, to pray over you for. That's what I'm here for. That's what the whole staff is here for. Like, we want to talk with you and we want to walk with you through this. This is between you and the Lord, but also, like, this is what a body of believers is for, to walk through and encourage and uplift you. But also, if you relate to the story of Bathsheba, and you say, I have a lot of hurt in my heart, maybe from broken relationships or past pain or past trauma or anything like that. And you say, I don't know what to do with it. We are here to walk with you through that too. We are here to be praying for you and be uplifting you and encouraging you and telling you how the Lord can redeem you from that situation and just bring so much good to that. Or maybe you've heard this and you're like, I don't even really know what redemption looks like. Like, I don't. I haven't really experienced that. I haven't really experienced freedom that comes with Christ. We want to talk about that with you too. Like, that's what we're here for. We want you to know Christ and to love him and be in a relationship with him. We want you to do that. Because we know that he is a good father and he's the ultimate comforter. And he listens and he cares and he is the ultimate redeemer, where he can redeem any situation, no matter what it looks like. If it's like David, if it's like Bathsheba, if it's like somebody else and you're like, I can't really relate to either of them, he can redeem anything. He can bring healing to anything. He can use any story. So I encourage you guys, as we're closing, I encourage you guys to start thinking about, what is my story? Because each of you guys have one. Each of you guys have a story, have a life, have something going on, have hardship, have a lot of joys, have a lot of laughter, have a lot of amazing things in life. But each of you guys has a story. And so I encourage you guys to think about, what is my story? How did the Lord bring redemption and redeem something in my past? Or how is he redeeming me right now? And I even encourage you guys to even go and ask other people in this room. Like, I guarantee that everyone has a story, something that we can celebrate over, something that we can mourn over. Everyone does. And then I love talking to people and hearing a story, hearing some of the joys and some of the heartache. But yeah, I just encourage you guys to think about that and say, how has the Lord redeemed me, or how will he? Because he's capable and he's able. But yeah, as the band comes up, as I close, I am going to I'm going to pray over us. So, if you'll bow your heads with me. Dear Lord Jesus, I thank you, Father, for just who you are, Lord. You are the same yesterday and today and tomorrow, Lord God. And we get to see this story, a story that is hard. It's hard to listen to. It's hard to hear, Lord. But we see who you are, and we get to see how you redeem this situation, Father, and you bring good out of it, Lord. I pray, Lord, that we'll keep thinking about this and think about our story, Lord God, and who you've made us, Lord. And I pray that you'll bring redemption out of our story. I pray that this will be a continual thing, something that we get to celebrate over of your work in our life, Father. I pray that you'll just be with us, Lord, as we continue to think about this, Lord, and ponder over it, Lord. I pray if there's any sin or wrongdoing or a place of healing that's needed, Lord, I pray that you'll show us, Lord. But I just pray that you'll just walk with us, Lord. In your name, I pray. Amen.